Overnight, Democrats got a new unexpected ally on the issue of extending the expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies at the very heart of this shutdown debate. It's Republican Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, who broke with her own party yesterday, writing a lengthy post on social media calling for action to extend Obamacare subsidies and prevent insurance premium hikes. Greene wrote in part that her adult children, who are covered by the ACA, have health insurance premiums that will double next year if Congress allows the tax credits to expire. Yeah, them and millions of other Americans. Greene emphasized that she will not support taxpayer-funded health care for undocumented immigrants and slammed Republican leaders for failing to address the subsidies issue. Democrats, of course, have been pushing for provisions in the federal spending bill to extend these subsidies, which expire right now at the end of 2025. But Republican House and Senate leaders have said the issue will not be discussed until Democrats agree to reopen the government. So it's a debate on when to negotiate. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Seth Magaziner of Rhode Island. Congressman, just first, your reaction to this maybe unlikely ally on the ACA subsidies?
Well, I think there's a lot more Republicans than just her who understand that we need to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. In fact, a majority of Republicans polled say that they want these tax credits extended, and I think a lot of Republicans in Congress do as well. Taking a step back here, millions of people are about to see their health insurance costs double. Millions more will lose their insurance altogether if we do not act. That is why Democrats in Congress have taken a stand on this issue. And what you see on the Republican side is they have not had a plan for health care for 15 years. For 15 years, they've been talking about how they want to repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it, but they have no replacement. And you now see these cracks on the Republican side starting to show, where not only Marjorie Taylor Greene, but also Donald Trump is saying we should do a deal with the Democrats on health care. But Mike Johnson and John Thune refused to negotiate. So there are a lot of cracks on the Republican side. They are in disarray, and it all stems from the fact that they don't have a plan on health care, and they never have.
Yeah, I remember something about concepts of a plan, but I'm not sure I ever saw those concepts actually put into a bullet point form where we can actually see what the Republican health care plan is. But I think as we watch the contours of this, there's two things that I've noticed, in part from my conversation with the speaker over the weekend. The idea that Democrats, by holding your leverage point here, have been able to turn this from a conversation of should we negotiate on ACA subsidies to now it being a question of when. Do you think that there is the appetite in your caucus to go along with getting out of a government shutdown if it's just simply a promise or an agreement to negotiate later? There's such a trust deficit that I feel in my conversations.
No, of course not. I mean, for Mike Johnson to say, oh, well, trust us, we'll deal with the health care issue later, shows that, number one, he doesn't understand the issue because open enrollment is already beginning and a lot of people will have already opted out of health insurance if we wait too much longer. And that'll do tremendous damage to the healthcare system. But also, these are the same people, these congressional Republicans, who just cut $1 trillion from Medicaid over the summer. And now they just want us to trust them that they'll fix it later. They have no credibility on the matter. Today is the 18th day that Mike Johnson has had the House on vacation, House Republicans on vacation, in the midst of a government shutdown while the healthcare system is exploding. That is a tactical mistake on his part. He is showing no urgency to actually solve this healthcare crisis, and he's making a mistake. It's sending the wrong message to the American people.
And even some of his own Republican colleagues have said that they wish that they were in Washington doing something when it comes to these negotiations or speaking to the shutdown. They don't love the optics of it. And I think for viewers who are like, well, Congress typically takes a few weeks off sometimes, this is not one of those pre-planned recess periods. You talk, though, Congressman, about the health care impacts that you've seen, that we are expecting from the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. You recently met with health care leaders at a hospital in your area. What did you hear from them about how to address rising health care costs, but also what they're experiencing right now?
Yeah, so healthcare leaders, whether it's hospital leaders, nursing homes, community health centers, rural health centers, they will all tell you we have to extend the Affordable Care Act funding and restore the money that was cut from Medicaid by Republicans over the summer. Understand, hospitals, nursing homes, other healthcare providers, they're having to make their decisions now about what services they are going to offer next year and what their staffing levels are going to be next year. That's why, again, when Mike Johnson says, oh, trust us, we'll deal with this later, even if he was being honest, and he has no credibility on this, but even if he was being honest about that, the damage will have already been done. A lot of nursing homes and hospitals and other healthcare providers will have to shut down or cut back on services if, as we go through open enrollment, a lot of people are no longer able to afford their insurance. And what Marjorie Taylor Greene said about her sons seeing their health insurance costs doubling for next year, there are millions of Americans all across the country who are finding the exact same thing now. That is why Mike Johnson needs to take the House out of recess and bring us back so that we can have a real bipartisan negotiation to fix the healthcare system and to reopen the government.
And if I were seeing you in the halls of Congress right now, I would be asking you about the caucus call that you guys had last night, speaking virtually. What was the conversation? What are the conversations that you and your colleagues are having? As I know from talking with some of them, that as they're at home, they are hearing that people are hurting right now, sometimes because of the shutdown, sometimes just because of the larger landscape and environment that makes you guys feel like it's worth holding the line right now.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats are largely united on this. Every Democrat in the House, and I assume the Senate as well, supports extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits, supports restoring Medicaid funding, and understands the importance and the urgency of the situation. You know, Mike Johnson, on the other hand, has real disagreement and disarray on the Republican side of the House. Some are saying extend the tax credits, others are saying don't. I think the real reason, you know, there's been speculation that the reason Mike Johnson didn't want the House in session the last 2 weeks was because we now have the 218th signature to release the Epstein files. That's possible. But I think the other reason is that he knows that if Republicans were in town and we were all able to talk to each other face to face, there would be tremendous pressure to do a deal to address the healthcare crisis. And for whatever reason, Mike Johnson has decided he doesn't want that, even though apparently Donald Trump is open to it.
And that's one of the questions that I asked the speaker over the weekend. If Donald Trump came to you and said, let's do a deal on the ACA subsidies, would you work against him? And the speaker continued to say, well, just now is not the time to do it. We've got to reopen the government first. Again, I do think that Democrats holding out here has sort of shifted the Overton window. But you're also right that I think a few things can be true at once when it comes to why House Republicans are not in Washington and why the whole House is out of session right now. We're going to leave it there for now. Democratic Congressman Seth Magaziner of Rhode Island, I'll have you back to talk about your continued push to ban members from trading stocks in the future. But for now, we thank you for coming on to talk about this.
Trump didn't just lose the room today, he lost the plot. When you've got reports of a Republican revolt in the Senate and even Marjorie Taylor Greene waving a white flag on healthcare subsidies, you're not running a party, you're running from reality. And the human cost of that dodge, it's not theoretical. It hits wallets, hospital floors, and kitchen tables fast. Here's what's actually happening. The shutdown standoff is now fused to a simple, brutal question. Do we stop people's premiums from exploding next year, or do we let millions get priced out and call it leverage? Democrats say extend the credits now, because open enrollment is here. Republican leadership says later maybe, once the government reopens. But later is when families have already given up coverage and hospitals have already cut staff. And then the crack. Marjorie Taylor Greene publicly says her own adult kids will see their premiums double if Congress lets those credits die. Double. She won't back coverage for undocumented folks. Fine, that's her line. But on the basic math, she broke ranks. Meanwhile, Trump himself is sniffing around a deal. Yet Speaker Mike Johnson idles the House at home as the system buckles. That's not strategy, that's neglect. Let's be clear about the incentives. Republicans spent 15 years promising a grand health care replacement that never arrived. They cut Medicaid over the summer and now want trust on a handshake. Trust, while hospitals, nursing homes, and clinics are doing next year's budgets this month. If you run a rural health center, later means layoffs. If you're a parent balancing rent and insulin, later means fear. So why the stall? Power. Because the second they sit in the same room, the truth gets loud. Voters, Republican and Democrat, like not going bankrupt when they get sick. Extending subsidies is popular. It lowers the temperature of people's lives. That's why some Republicans want out of the hostage game, why you see fractures, why the MAGA brand can't hold. The cruelty used to be the point. Now it's just bad optics and worse economics. Here's the moral core. Government isn't a punishment. It's a promise. The promise that when your kid breaks an arm or your mom needs a scan, you won't have to choose between care and food. Breaking that promise to posture for a shutdown is corruption of priorities, of duty, of truth. You can't spin an empty pharmacy. You can't filibuster a medical bill on the kitchen counter. So no, later isn't good enough. Bring the House back, put the votes on the floor, extend the help, reopen the government, and stop treating people's coverage like a campaign stunt. If even your loudest allies are telling you the fire is real, the decent thing, the conservative thing, the American thing, is to pick up the hose and put it out.